Hi, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of From the Trenches. We have three fantastic individuals here today. Kevin Estwick is the Los Angeles-based screen composer agent for the Core Music Agency. Shakura S'Aida is a Brooklyn-born, Swiss-raised, and Canadian-based, multiple Juno Award-nominated and Maple Blues Award-winning blues songwriter, artist, and actress, now based in Toronto. Erica Procunier is an Emmy-nominated and Canadian Screen Award-winning composer based in Toronto, and she serves on the executive of the Screen Composers Guild of Canada. So welcome all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be talking a little bit about negotiation, and we'll just dive right in if that's okay with you guys. The first question that I'm going to present to all of you is if you can maybe tell me about a particularly hard negotiation that you had to go through, and how did you or didn't you come to a compromise? And maybe Erica, I'll start with you.
It happened during the pandemic, so it was actually quite difficult because there was this extra layer of sort of like almost like existential panic that was happening at the time. And it really came down to like weighing like how much I wanted to work on this job versus how much I was willing to, you know, almost disrespect myself in a way, if that makes any sense. Like my work is worth something that I've come to realize like has a lot of value to, and other people should value that. And I have to personally value that. I just had to eventually walk away after many, many weeks of discussion and like, you know, even writing letters, detailing like the entire math of the gig from my end.
It's unfortunate you had to walk away with that, but I saw Shakura was sort of nodding her head a little bit there, and I'm wondering if you can maybe share an experience that you've had, Shakura.
Sure, but I think, when you're talking about marginalized people, any kind of negotiation where you're negotiating by yourself or for yourself is particularly difficult. If you are the creator and you don't have a representative, especially when you're trying to speak and the words just don't come out, who is your advocate, then you are constantly in a difficult position. Like now, I think, I am an artist, a performing artist first and foremost, and so for most of my career, I have represented myself musically. And as a result, I learned to make sure that I had contracts, especially when I knew that I was going to be dealing with people who I had heard might try to take advantage of an artist. If I ended up in a situation where, even though I had a contract, they still were not willing to honor the contract. My mother on board as my momager, and she then took over all of my negotiations, so that we would have conversations, and we still do have conversations about what it is that I want, what it is that I need, what it is that she thinks I need, which is usually more than I think, both financially and in other ways, and then she goes forth and she advocates for that.
So, Kevin, can you tell us about a particularly hard negotiation that you had to go through? And how did you guys come to a compromise, or how did you come to a conclusion with that?
We were approached by an artist that would have been very fun to work with. Before we could know anything further about the project, they required us to sign an NDA, standard procedure. However, this particular NDA had language that effectively would have allowed them to sue in the event that they basically had a bad dream and thought that the NDA had been breached. And we really wanted to work with this artist. And so we came back to their representative asking if we could just have some flexibility in that non-disclosure agreement. And ultimately the answer was no. Fortunately, and part of why I bring this particular situation up is because we were able to do that because we did not need it at the time. We were able to walk away because we took a look at our leverage, what our interests were, particularly what our client's interest was and is in what their vision is for their career and their brand. And ultimately, it was something that we could live without. In this case, it was better for us to stick to our guns.
Where is that line? How do you determine that line in the sand? When do you walk away from something? What's that process like for you?
So, you want to know what your client's vision is, first and foremost. And you also are there to see things that maybe they're not looking at. Maybe it's not their job to look at. And you want to hear things that they see that you don't necessarily see. So there's pros and cons with any situation. And so it's really just like looking at pros and cons and seeing what sort of things your artist values and needs to accomplish or acquire those things that they value, and you go from there.
It's not always about the rate of the money. It might be about working conditions as well, and sometimes you can read between the lines and you can really understand that if they're not treating you well in this part of the situation, they're probably also not going to treat you well later on. But again, I don't think it's black and white. Like, if you want X amount of money for doing the job and they don't give it to you, it's totally your prerogative to walk away just purely because of that. Know your value for sure. And I think sometimes you just need experience of taking the job when you probably shouldn't have, and realizing the actual repercussions of doing that, and how you really feel really disrespected, and then you're doing all this work for somebody who doesn't deserve it. And that's kind of how I feel. I learned my own value in the end, is just by doing things and being in bad situations where I was being taken advantage of. And that's sad to say, and I don't want to recommend that happen to everybody, but, you really have to know what you're willing to do and what you shouldn't have to put up with. So.
Shakura, I see you nodding your head a lot, and I'd love to get your thoughts about a time you had to walk away and what helped you draw the line in the sand for you. How did you come to that decision?
I made a really big decision for me in 2005 to pursue music by itself without having any kind of safety net. And that decision was based on the fact that I was willing to recognize that I wanted to be great, my desire for greatness. And it wasn't a desire to be greater than anyone else. It was just a desire to achieve the greatness that I believe the universe had for me. And in accepting that as my truth and as my path, it also meant that I had to accept that I had a value. As Erica just said, it's really important to understand your value. And I also had an end goal. And what fits in my end goal is working with people who understand my value, just like I understand theirs. And it becomes really, really easy when you have a goal in mind and people present working conditions, venue conditions, compromises to your safety, compromises to your financial ask. It becomes really easy to say no. What the situation I don't want to get into is I didn't want to do this job anyway, and now I'm here. I never want to say that. So if I have any kind of inkling that it's not going well, I'd rather turn away now than turn away later and say, you weren't even my first choice, or this wasn't something that I wanted to do. You talked me into this, because truth is, no matter what the situation is, I chose to go in it. So I find it easy to walk away.
I'm going to push on that, and I'm going to say, if you were to take a look at your career 10 years ago, what are some of the things that you would have done differently then? And do you think that you would have made those same decisions 10 years ago?
Where I learned about running my business is because of what happened. There were certain things I had to learn that way. There was no other way for me to learn it. Like the situation with the person in Europe, everyone said, he's a shyster. I watched him and I thought I was better than. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. You're not as smart as the people who want to take advantage of you. Once you put that in your head, once you put that thought in your head and accept the fact that there are people out there whose entire life is around taking advantage of, negotiating for their agenda. No matter how many safety nets you put up, no matter how many clauses you have in your contract, they're going to find a way to manipulate it in a way that will benefit them. So once you get that in your head and you accept it, when you meet those kind of people, rather than trying to figure out a way to one-up them, you just go, I'm out. So there's nothing that I would go back and change, because I had to be in those situations to get to the point where I now go, not going to work with that person. Will never work with that person again. That was an experience. I'll do that again. Here's what I learned. I'm going to put this extra bit in my contract. I'm going to make sure that's very clear. Those type of things,
How about you, Erica? 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it seems like, for me, it seems like it was eons ago. But What are the things that you would do differently now with regard to negotiation?
Oh, well, I know I've made this mistake multiple times where we've discussed something verbally, like whether having a coffee or like over the phone or like something like that, where, I explain like, for that price, you're not going to be able to buy the copyrights off me, but you'll be able to distribute your movie worldwide. But then, we get way down the line and we haven't emailed about this and we don't have it in writing. And suddenly their lawyers have told them, oh, well, you need all of the rights. You need all the copyrights. You can talk about it, but it's not the same as just summarize your conversation in an email immediately. Put it in writing and it's there. That would be what I would say I would do 10 years ago. I could have avoided a lot of trouble.
Kevin, I want to ask you, and as an agent, you usually take on clients who are fairly established in their career, but you often get asked to give advice to younger artists, younger composers. And for those of them who are doing their own negotiations, what sort of advice would you tell them?
It's a very, very, very much a relationship business. And it is a marathon and not a sprint. And the reason that you hear these cliche things often enough is because they tend to hold weight.
It's not always about the money, and I think I already said that. But there's situations where like I've taken on work that like I just really loved the script so much that I was like, I have to do it. And I knew it was like not enough money, but I'm so happy that I did do it. I think you do have to, try to hone your sort of intuition in that regard. There's a little bit of instinct that comes into play.
Shakura, anything to add to that?
First of all, I tell them to build a community of other people, whether they be young and maybe some elders, who they can all speak to. They can have an opportunity to talk about, how to negotiate and learn from each other. We're not always all in competition. I have several musicians and producers that I speak to about pricing and all of that. And I think the other thing that I would suggest is it's not a bad idea to get someone to act as your agent before you have an agent. There are a lot of young people now who are coming out with arts management experience, who need the experience of working with artists and working with organizations, negotiating all of those things. So it's not a bad idea to get someone to be your front person. And if you build that community of young people and have mentors involved, that person could actually front for more than one of you. Don't be afraid to ask.
When you're about to get in, put on the gloves and get ready to do some negotiation here, what's the preparation that you do? What kind of homework do you do on your client? What kind of things do you want to know about yourself? Can you just talk a little bit about how you prepare for that negotiation?
Well, there's a song and there's a saying. If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So I do my best to practice that, and by that I mean you're you are aware of the conversation that's going on. Again, it's really about leverage. It's about the relationship that you have with the person you may be doing business with. Have you done any research, any due diligence on them? Do you know anybody who's negotiated with them before and what kind of experience that is? Do you know what their priorities are? Do you know what their company's priorities are? Are they at a large studio and there are layoffs looming in the distance? You have to know what everybody's needs are to the best of your ability. And as long as you can take care of that, things usually work out, whether or not you take the gig or walk away from it.
How about you, Erica?
Most of my research is on the creative side, I would say, but like while you're doing that creative research, you're also going to come across the business side of the research. It's really good to be aware of like what someone else might get paid. There's other resources that I personally have access to, especially in Canada, which is that I'm in the Screen Composers Guild of Canada. We have a rates document that's available to members, so you can, check out like how, for example, how does an animation series get paid in Canada, and so am I getting, sort of market rates offered to me?
Shakura, anything to add to that?
I'm a bit different because I am an artist. A lot of my negotiations are around what am I bringing into the venue? How many pieces am I bringing into the venue? How long am I performing for? There's like standard questions. So I have prices already for standard shows, whether it be a 2-person show or a 13-piece show. In my rider, it says what we would like, and then it says what we really need. So this is the base. I set my boundaries in my contract. Because the other thing that I don't know if we've talked about is the fact that a lot of these people who hire us speak to each other. They connect to each other. So they also talk about, well, yeah, this is the price they gave me, or this is what they needed in order to get the job done. So it's important that we stay consistent in what we're trying to negotiate with.
Absolutely. But I want to ask you all, just sort of on a positive note, because a lot of the time that we think about negotiation as people as adversaries, and I want to kind of end this off on a positive note. So if you just want to maybe tell me about an experience where you had a negotiation, but it really ended up in a good place, and you guys, everyone walked away happy and smiling. And maybe I'll start with you, Erica.
I think what specific things that I can think of recently are situations where, my agent has gotten me like a little more cash. If I choose to release a soundtrack, I am able to do that. A little bit of give and take is great, and when you see from the other side a few concessions, and then I feel more comfortable with perhaps making a few concessions on my side. I think that's a positive thing.
Very good. Shakura, I'm going to ask you this question. We tend to think of negotiation as a very adversarial thing, but sometimes it can be really rewarding, that you can come up with like a feel-good story where, both sides walk away with what they want and you feel good about it. And I'm wondering if you have a story like that to share?
I think I have more than a situation. I have a practice, which is if someone contacts me and they want me and my music, we have an understanding between my mother, my agent, and I that I get to speak with them first. And I get to find out about what their vision is. And the understanding is that I'm not going to speak about money with them, but I'm going to get an idea of what they're looking for. And that way we're building a relationship, and the relationship is being built on the fact that they know that I'm hearing them and that I'm willing to put in the work to make sure that whatever they're doing is going to be successful. And so when they go into the negotiation with my mother or my agent, it's already from the point that I'm on their side, that whatever I'm asking for is just so I can do what I need to do in order to make them happy. And I think that's just a general practice for me.
I think it's a wonderful practice. I think that's lovely. I think to be able to, we've talked so much about relationships and not just between you and your potential client, but also relationships, your community. But I think that's a really lovely way to just establish that rapport and to, I think so often negotiations, we forget about the music or we forget about the work and the craft because things get pushed so far down the line. Kevin?
When I step into a negotiation, what I'm looking at is that on all sides, there are people with rational self-interests, and they've got families, they've got kids, they've got things in their life that makes them human, and they're here at work and they want the best outcome for themselves, for the people that they work for. They don't want to look silly when they go back to their colleagues. Composer or artist, the same thing. So when you look at it from that perspective, there really is no adversarial binary of us versus them or this side versus that side. It's just about, am I in a situation where I'm optimally positioned in a way that also is optimal for the people that I'm working with.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. I think on that note, I would like to say thank you to Kevin and to Eric and to Shakura for joining us today. It's been a wonderful conversation. Oftentimes when we talk about negotiations, it's usually over a drink and usually a lot of face palms and all that. But I think that it's been really enlightening to talk with the three of you on this. So I'd like to thank you guys for your time and look forward to doing it again sometime soon. So thank you.
Thank you.
For more candid conversations and free music creator resources, visit musiccreator.ca. The Screen Composers Guild of Canada acknowledges the support of the Canada Council for the Arts. Thanks for listening.